Hello and welcome to the Shifting Schools podcast. My name is Trisha Friedman, and this week I get to kick off our summer mini-series that's going to explore the future world of work. Listeners and subscribers to the free Shifting Schools newsletter voted on this as their topic that folks most wanted to learn more about. And Jeff Udick and I were not surprised at all by those votes. We know this is top of mind for students and their families, and that's why we are super excited to bring you a stellar lineup all summer long. Kicking us off today is Ann Nakaska, who has a background in psychology, education, and business. She specializes in career decision-making and career planning with a special interest in career opportunities of the future. She believes that people can prepare for the fourth industrial revolution workplace by developing a GET. That stands for Global Entrepreneurial and Technological Ready Mindset, and is a wonderful person for us to be kicking things off with. Our conversation has so many insights and so much practical advice for you to share with students, their parents, and their caregivers. Before we welcome Ann to the Shifting Schools podcast, we do have a quick word from our show's sponsor. Hey listeners, a quick pause before we dive back in. Since all summer long, we are talking about the future world of work, we know any future is only possible when we help students face the challenges of the now. That's exactly why we want to tell you about something that's going to change the way you understand your students' lives. It comes from the groundbreaking group at Alongside, an AI-assisted mental health support tool built specifically for K-12 schools. And this summer, Shifting Schools listeners can be among the very first to access Alongside's brand new 2025 Youth Mental Health Report. It's packed with insights drawn from over 250,000 anonymous AI chats students had on Alongside's evidence-based platform over the past school year. Here's just a small glimpse of what you'll learn. Why teens say sleep is one of their biggest struggles, what's making school life balance feel impossible, the unexpected ways boys are learning to ask for help, why confidential, self-guided AI tools resonate so strongly with students, and what the research is showing about how tools like this can be used in safe and effective ways. Want the report and bonus access to an exclusive webinar? Head to www.alongside.care/shifting to get on that list. We're proud to have Alongside as a sponsor this summer, and even prouder to help spotlight their work in reimagining student mental health. Check out the show notes to learn more or head straight to www.alongside.care/shifting. And now, back to the conversation. And with that, our summer series kicks off with Ann Nakaska exploring the future world of work. And it's such a pleasure to be speaking with you. You've been helping folks figure out where to go with careers for a long time. This is very much your bread and butter, but the times feel different right now heading into the fourth industrial revolution. What is one skill, though? I know that perhaps in these times of uncertainty, sometimes it's useful for us to think like not everything is going to change. Is there a skill that you're thinking, for sure, this is still going to be very important in this new era coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know most of the time when we talk about what skills needed in the fourth industrial revolution, the skills that come to mind for most people are creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, adaptability. So those are the skills that we typically hear, and are in articles about the fourth industrial revolution. One of the things I talk about in one of my articles is that the reason why those skills are so important is because there is an overarching skill set that we need to be able to handle the fourth industrial revolution. And that is what I call creating a get ready mindset. And so GET actually stands for Global, Entrepreneurial, and Technological. So this is about really thinking differently about work than how we have in the past. Because the fourth industrial revolution is very different than the second industrial revolution and the third industrial revolution. And when we're thinking about being more global, Zoom and the pandemic, but really, we really are working remote, and we're working and connecting with people all over the world. And that creates amazing opportunities and partnerships that we didn't have before. So that's something that's really exciting that's happening. And then entrepreneurial, we talk a lot about the gig economy, but we don't tend to talk about the gig economy and the fourth industrial revolution together. And we really are moving towards that entrepreneurial world. And so we need to develop more entrepreneurial thinking. And we saw this, I think that COVID gave us a mini example of that. All of a sudden, our world was in upheaval. And some people really thrived and others really struggled. And a lot of that had to do with having this get ready mindset. I was just driving to get groceries the other day, and one of the restaurants that's right by us, they've set up for the summer their great big parking lot patio. Now, pre-COVID, they never had that. But of course, with COVID, we weren't allowed to be inside very much. And so they made a deal with the shopping center to expand their patio rather than just having a few chairs. They set up barricades within the parking lot, and now they have this great big patio. And they've just continued it since COVID because people enjoy it so much. That's a really great example of entrepreneurial thinking, that this happens. And so then how do you handle it? And taking advantage of those opportunities. And then, of course, technological. So the fourth industrial revolution, most people are thinking AI, but there's about 14, 15 different technologies that are impacting us in the fourth industrial revolution that are really going to impact industries in different ways. We have AI, we have robotics, we have autonomous vehicles, and drones are a part of that. We have 3D printing, we have augmented and virtual reality, we've got bioprinting. There's all of these different technologies that I talk about. So people are going to need to figure out what the industry that they're working in, how those technologies are impacting them. So not everybody has to, it's just like computers. Not everybody has to be a programmer, but we all did have to learn how to use computers in the third industrial revolution, right? So that's really the one, and I know it's like a real big one, but I think it's the most important. Because we hear about all these little individual skills, but when we really look at the big picture, that's the reason why all those problem solving and creativity and adaptability, that's why it's so important, is because we have to change our mindset about how we approach work.
But I wonder if part of changing our mindset is rehearsing it through the ways in which we teach in schools. I think when you're talking about holistic learning, you're talking about things that are interdisciplinary. So I'm not isolating science from language. You mentioned the pandemic, and I think for me, that was the first time I really understood why science communication is so critical. But yet it had me thinking about the way in which we will often say, science is over there, and then persuasive writing is over here. But if we want that big picture, I think maybe we need a lot more project-based interdisciplinary learning.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about the skills that you're thinking these might be newer, that, these are emerging and we need to see it happening more in schools?
Yeah. So I really think, and I talk about this in my presentations at different career development conferences and stuff, the skills that I see that schools, both high schools and post-secondary, need to bring in a lot more. And they don't even need to do it like in this big way, because I know when we talk about bringing entrepreneurial business skills to the schools, sometimes the academic world can get quite upset because they go, that's We're not about just teaching people business and profit and capitalism. We're about learning for learning's sake and all of that. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that big. We just need to introduce students to how to run a business, how to sell things, how to market things. And so to me, that's the most important skill, because we are shifting more and more towards a gig economy. And gig economy to me is not driving for Uber and those kinds of things. It's really about contract work. It's like all of it. It's contract work. It's having other part-time work. The projects that you talk about, definitely lots of project-based work, and really understanding how you can be more fluid in changing things up. Like, first I'm working over here and now I'm working over here. Like, I know people, a number of people in my field, that's all they've ever done is contract work. They have worked full time. And I remember one of them saying when they got their master's, their mom said, "Oh, good. Now that you have your master's, maybe you can get a full-time job." And it's like, no, she's already well ahead of the curve. She's already doing what all of us need to learn how to do. And so to prepare for that, we need to know about financial literacy. We need to put a budget together. And so I really think in high school, if we have a course where students have to run and create a business, then they would understand the impact of trade tariffs, and they would understand the impact of what happens when we raise taxes, and all of those things that we see in the news all the time. They have big impact. And if we want to be a thriving economy, if we want to have jobs and include everybody, which I really think is important. Coming from Alberta, where we have these booms and busts, and what I see during the boom years when things are thriving and there's growth and there's potential. And so then there's opportunity. There's so much more opportunity for everyone when we have an economy that's like that. And so if we can have and create economies that are thriving and growing, then there's opportunity for everyone. But we need more people with an entrepreneurial mindset. And younger people are actually, that's what they're looking at. They look at the job market and it's not that great for them. And I just read an article on Gen Z saying about a quarter of them are thinking of opening their own businesses and running their own businesses. And I'm thinking, okay, are we preparing them for that? And we're talking about the gig economy where 70% of the people are going to be entrepreneurs and not working for like big corporations or whatever. And so then it's like, are they prepared? So are the 50 plus who are being outsourced out of their organizations, are they prepared to be entrepreneurial for the next 15 years of their career or longer? Like, I'm 67, and so I'm working, and I'm still planning on working for like another 5 years or whatever, as long as I can. So I think that's a big piece of it. And I think that's how schools can best prepare. So a course in high school and then another course in post-secondary. So for example, like in psychology, a lot of people who take psychology end up eventually opening up a practice. I know when I took my psych degree, nobody gave me a business course that I had to take that was compulsory, right? A compulsory business course that I had to do. And so I think that's a big one. And I don't think that would take a lot of change to curriculum to make that happen.
No, if anything, I think it really is tapping into what's very relevant and also what's very interesting, because I think as humans, we're often very naturally drawn to learn more about human behavior, which really plays into how do we make decisions about buying, purchasing patterns, but also if it's a gig economy, understanding that relational connection.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe say a little bit more about how you see that when you're talking about the entrepreneurial mindset? Is part of that also knowing, like, if it is my personal business, I also need to be able to connect with that person, market myself in a way that, especially I think right now, doesn't feel overly corporate or as though it's a persona that's AI generated. Does something come to mind around that?
I think it's a lot. There's actually a lot that helps us connect. One, I think as we have become more automated, and some of the automation, what people don't realize too, is that most people think that automation is happening just because big business wants to make more money and that's easier and we'll just get rid of people. And that's definitely part of that's true. But there is another part that most people don't realize, that we are becoming more automated because industries can't find people. And there's a shortage of workers. And worldwide, the demographics for younger generation is shrinking and shrinking. So as more of the older generation leaves and then people are promoted up, there is like no one to take lower jobs. So especially like in retail and those kinds of things. And so what's happened is with all this automation, it's become not very personable. And also because we can work from anywhere, we don't always have a brick and mortar place where you can go back and complain about something. And so trying to find so customer service that's a whole area. Career opportunities. People can find lots of career opportunities in creating great customer service. And I know a number of people who work in the customer service space, like Jeff Mowat, who is a CAPS Alberta member. He does a lot of work around customer service, and he's amazing. And he really shares about how we can connect with people. So if people want to see how they can improve customer service, I would definitely say check his stuff out. I think he's got some free newsletters and stuff like that. So there's definitely that personal side. But so that's half the equation. How do we reach our clients? But the other part too is we've really come away from, especially in the career development sector, I feel, is we've really moved away from understanding industry. And so it's one of the reasons why I got into all this research in the first place is because I was looking for the information and couldn't find it. So it was like, okay, I'll go find it and then I'll tell everybody about it. So that's what I've been doing the last 5-6 years. And we often think about what's our passion, what do we want to do? But most people are not thinking about what industry do I want to contribute to? What industry, how do we want to help that industry grow in society? Because we give our time and our energy to an industry. Doesn't matter what job we're in, we are connected to an industry. So what's your industry? Do you like your industry? Should you be working in a different industry? Those are questions we really don't think very much about. And they're really important moving forward because if you don't understand your industry, it is much harder to be successful.
Is there an industry that you think right now, when you think of industries that are misunderstood or maybe young folks are not thinking of in terms of just how broad ranging career pathways are? Is there one that's top of mind for you?
Oh, there are so many. That was what happened when I started doing the research because I thought, I don't know how much I'm going to find because if automation and robots are taking everything, am I going to find anything? And what I found is, oh my goodness, every time I started doing research, there's more stuff on everything and lots of exciting things. But I think the biggest thing that has happened, and especially with AI, so there are some shifts happening that we are going to have to change our mindsets because we have this, what I call job snobbery. These are the cool industries and the smart people go here. And that even happened when I took business at SAIT. It was like the people who were really smart, they did accounting majors. And then the people who were smart after that, then they did marketing. And then the people who couldn't do, any of those, then they would do admin. And it's like, no, that's not why. And every industry has those snobbery things. And so what's been happening with AI, what I've really noticed is, especially like in finance, they're estimating that half the jobs in kind of the financial sector will disappear. And so then we need to be aware that there are certain industries, just like when computers came in, certain industries shrank but other industries really grew. So a lot of industries that are invisible, some were made more visible during COVID, are industries that most people don't think about. So for example, AI and all of these technologies, like Bitcoin consumes the same amount of energy as a small country, like the Netherlands. That's one company. That's how much energy they consume. And then there's water for cooling that goes along with that. So you have all of this technology that is growing and growing, consuming more and more electricity. And then we're talking about we want everybody to be driving electric vehicles too. And it's like, I'm married to someone who started their career as an electrical engineer in the power industry. It's like, and he said, it took us 100 years to build the grid that we have. We need to really understand. So there again, this importance of understanding industry and what we're doing, because the power industry is going to be growing. We will need power engineers. We will need to and have more lines. We will need to have more technicians, like power technicians, like all of this whole area. That's really behind the scenes. You go, you flick on a light switch, the power is there. We don't really think too much about, how much we need. And we really do need to think about it because it's big. And that's a big difference between the West and and other countries is while we argue about should we be doing wind or solar and should we be not doing oil and gas and everything else, the countries that are part of BRICS, they're doing it all. And as a result of that, their economies are really growing while ours are not, because we're so busy fighting about which ones we should do that it keeps us like locked in and not being as productive as we can. But there's other industries too, supply chain management, which of course we learned all about during COVID, right?
Right.
But so aviation, absolutely growing. We're at 99% capacity at airports. And they're talking about aviation travel doubling by 2040. That's 15 years. So you think about how long it takes us to get development permits and everything. And I'm thinking, now you know why when your flight, when something happens, it takes forever for you to get rerouted. It's because there's no space. There's no extra room for anything to happen. And nobody wants airport expansion and stuff. And it's like, we're going to need airport expansion because that's an industry that's growing. Rail is another industry that's looking for people. Emergency responders, police, fire, military, all of that, huge. A lot of work to be done in military, especially in Canada and stuff. So there's a lot of areas and industries that we don't tend to really look at very much that they really are crying for people.
I think it's an important thing for us to reiterate because you're right. I know there are a lot of young folks who keep hearing this message of certain industries are going away. And while it's true, we also need to be talking about the ones that are growing. So thank you for that. And you have a post in which you recommend, I love this phrase. This is your quote. We need to be focusing on the work versus the job. And you're saying like, this will guarantee more employment opportunities. What does it mean to focus on the work versus the job to you?
Yeah. And that comes from a quote from William Bridges in his book, Job Shift, which actually changed my career path because then I saw what was coming down the pike and went, oh my goodness, people are not ready for this. And they really aren't, and they still aren't. So what I mean by that is what happens, people do high school and then they'll do post-secondary or they'll come out of high school and they'll look for work. And so then we move to job search. And that's really what we've been trained to do too. But jobs are a product of the second industrial revolution. If you think about how things have progressed, there were artisans first. People used to go to markets and they used to be at the blacksmith and all of that. So people were much more entrepreneurial way back when. And then the steam engine came along and then we were able to produce goods in factories. And so the factories really started creating jobs. So because you could create 100 baskets or whatever in the factory, whereas the artisan might only create 5. So then you started working in the factories and you weren't as much of an artisan. And then through the computer era, that started to shift some more. So we started moving away, and that's when the gig economy started because people could do things on their home computer and do trades, do stock trades, have an online company, whatever. So a lot of entrepreneurial stuff started that way. And now it only becomes more. And so when we look for the work, which basically is what I'm doing with my work, I'm looking for where there's work. I'm not going to go and do all that work, but I look for where it is. And companies are needing to change really quickly with all the changes that are coming down the pike. They're trying to adapt to that. And so they need people like William Bridges said, who think of themselves as contractors versus employees. And that's also part of that get ready mindset, because what happens is when you think of your employer as your client versus somebody who's going to take care of you. And I understand why people want a job because it represents security. And so it's very scary to think that you're not going to have job security. So a job will give you job security. But you open up the door to other opportunities when you understand what your employer needs and how you can best serve them. And I think it makes you a better employee too, because you're going to serve your client much better as a contractor than you would as an employee. So I'll give you an example. When I was working in oil and gas way back, I had my first baby. And back then, mat leave was only like 3 to 6 months. It was not very long. I was not ready to go back to work full time. And I thought, what can I do? And I remembered that oftentimes what would happen in our department is we would get audits that would need to be done that weren't on our regular schedule. So we would book our schedule at the very beginning of the year. Everybody had their schedule for the whole year. We knew what we were going to do. And then other departments would come down to us and say, we need you to look into this or that. And so what it meant is we had to cancel other audits to make room for that. So I went to my employer and said, I'll do your extra audits. So I'll come in as a contractor. They already know me. I can do the work. They can just send me out to do it. And then somebody that I had worked for at doing the same job at another company, they were out contracting as well. And I went to them and said, I'll do your extra audits if you get stuff you can't handle. And I basically worked a quarter of the year and made basically what I made in a half a year. My previous work, got to look after my kids. I did that for like 5 years. But that was a position that did not exist until I went to the employer and asked about it. I had a client as well who he was filling in for a mat leave, and he was looking at his career change and going, I don't really know where I want to go from here. And when we were talking about what he was doing presently, there was about 10 or 20% of his job that he really liked. And he said, I've been thinking if I could do that 100% of the time, and it makes the company like a lot of money. He said, I would just love that. And so instead of helping him make a whole new career change and everything else, we put together a proposal to take to management and to sell this. Could he do this? And he didn't get 100% of the time, but he got 80% of the time. And they created a whole new position for him. And I just recently talked to him, and he's hiring somebody else to work under him. That's the kind of mindset that I'm talking about, and really understanding and knowing how to do that.
It strikes me that you've always been a problem finder and solver. And I guess maybe that's part of it, is like you have to be looking for the problems in order to solve them in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are so many problems. Are you familiar with JP's works? The challenge cards? Okay, here's a little plug for JP. JP Michelle, he created these challenge cards to help young people figure out how to find work. And instead of thinking about jobs, the card will say, help teams achieve. So is that something that you want to do? Or there's another one, build the school of the future. Do you want to be a part of that? And so then what happens is people think differently about job search and work opportunities and stuff, and they go off and explore problems that they want to help solve in the world. So it connects them to industry. It connects them to employers and companies that want to help solve those problems. And so then all of a sudden you are part of what you want to be doing and part of the work that you want to be doing. And that is absolutely the way that we need to be moving, because there just are so many changes coming. And we don't know what is going to happen down the pike, and it's scary. And so if I have one piece of advice for people, this is what I want them to think about when they think about all these changes. Because I'm more towards the end of my career looking back. People keep asking me when I'm going to retire, and it's like, I'm having too much fun to retire. But when I look back, because I was married, I'm so married to this electrical engineer, and he really got into computers, and he built his first computer. This was before,
Wow.
Yeah, took an old teletype and all of this stuff. So I've seen the computer era from the beginning all the way through to now having a computer on our phones. And what I can tell you is not much really changed. Things changed, but things didn't really, like we think that there was all this change, and there was. So how we do things really changed with computers. But what we do didn't really change. We still get together for Sunday dinners. We still go to the grocery stores and get our groceries. We still have to make meals. We still get up in the morning. We still have to buy clothes and put clothes on. So the things that we do during the day Like that hasn't changed. That's pretty steady. People are still going to need food. We're still going to need to ship food around. How we do it, might be done with drones, whatever. We'll probably be growing most of our food in vertical garden or vertical farms, that kind of thing. So how we do it changes, but what we're doing really doesn't.
I'm guessing that's kind of part of your psychology background too, is understanding what matters to humans also plays a huge role in that. I wonder if you
Absolutely.
could, I love your passion for your work. It's always great to see. And I wonder if in closing, you might just pull the curtain back a little bit on your research process. Are you, I'm wondering, is it you come across a fact? Like
Mhm.
I like quadruple checked this because this seemed impossible to me. But according to the US Census, there are now more households in the US with a pet than with a child under the age of 18. And I was like, can that be right? It's right.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I'm wondering,
absolutely.
is your research and workflow, you come across a headline, then you dig into it, or do you oscillate
Yeah.
between industries that you always want to have your thumb on the pulse on? How does it work for you?
It's a combination of things. So yes, like I'll come across an article statement that will make things like that. A really good example is we just had the election, right? At our advanced polling station for our particular riding, there was like this huge lineup because you could only have one voting booth things and it took forever. So what do you do when you're standing in line for an hour and a half? You start talking to the people around you. And so I'm talking with this young man in front of me. He's in his 40s and I asked him about what he does. And he works in the rail industry. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, so how's the rail industry going? And he said, I love it. He said, there are so many opportunities. Things are really changing in the industry because of automation and stuff. And so, yeah, he said, there's lots of stuff happening and he's doing really well. And I went, so then I go home and I go, I wonder what's happening in rail. What are the opportunities in rail? And lots of opportunities in rail, not just here, but in the US and Australia. I actually am planning to put up a little post on my LinkedIn about it in the UK. And so one little conversation, and then the next thing you know, I find all of this stuff. Other times I'll choose an industry and technology and I have to tell you, Trisha, I've thrown some really weird stuff together and going, there's probably nothing. And then all of this stuff comes up. There is so much stuff. And that's the other kind of really exciting part about it is when I think about all the research, and it's what I tell people, I go, this is not like the be all and end all. Like literally, when I do the research and then I pack all kinds of stuff, and Aaron Shepard teases me and he goes, you go to one of Ann's presentation, it's like getting hit by a fire hose. It's like pretty much because there's so much to share and I just want to get it like all out. And it's like, see all this stuff? Like this is exciting. And look at all of this. And we should be excited about the future. And that's what I want for people. I want them to be excited about the future. And oh my goodness, we're so depressed about the future. That's depressing. And so, yeah, so much out there. What I do is a drop in the bucket, really.
I think that idea of, again, having hope for the future is an important message. And you really drive the point home that if you dig into the research, I think that's almost a way to cultivate optimism when you feel like you don't have any.
Mm.
Because I do think, what you said about change and some things change and some things stay the same. In every era, there are certain jobs that have been lost and then new ones that have emerged.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And some of them are still around. We're not in the horse and buggy era anymore. But you know what? There's still people who make saddles. There's still people who shoe horses. There's still people who do all kinds of things with horses. And then we've created new jobs with horses too, where we do equine therapy and
That's
stuff.
right.
Yes, things change, but sometimes there is still space. That's the other thing too. Not all industries completely go away either. There's these little things like vinyl has come back.
Yep.
Who would have guessed vinyl would come back? And that's something else we need to think about too, that there is space for some of the things that are traditional too.
Everything old is new again. I love there's more analog board games being produced today than there were in the 50s, which also seems counterintuitive. And following you on LinkedIn is a pleasure. I love how much you are sharing there, but you also, of course, work with a wide spectrum of different audiences. For somebody who's listening and they're thinking, you know what? our parent community could use this dose of optimism, or our high schoolers would love to connect with some of the research you're doing.
Yeah.
What's a great way for folks to connect with you to find out other ways that you can enlighten them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm working on, so this is the funny part. And so I'm just going to share that although I talk a lot about technology, I'm not very technological. So I've really had to pick up my game in learning a lot of technology. So my goal this year is to create a YouTube channel. I have to do some more work. My website designer has been talking to me about updating my website, and I need to do that so that I can put more information and more content there to my website. But the first place I would recommend people go is just to my LinkedIn site. That's where a lot of my things are, because most people are not going to be going to the conferences where I'm presenting, because I present to other career practitioners so they can take that out to their clients. So if you're a career practitioner, look for me at all the big conferences like NCDA in the States and Connexus and with CEREC here in Canada. But I'm working with someone from Africa who is going to do some LinkedIn Live stuff that we're looking at doing together. So there's going to be lots of stuff out there, and it will all get posted to my LinkedIn so people will know where I'm at. So easy to connect with me there too, because I'm the only Ann Nakaska on LinkedIn. So super easy to find.
And we'll make it even easier by having that link in the show notes. And it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for the much needed dose of optimism. I think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of listeners right now when I say, woof, we needed that.
Thank you so much, Tricia. I really appreciate you asking me to come, because I appreciate people sharing my work, because the more we can get it out to people, then the more hope there is. And the more people can be looking at other options, because we don't get enough career exploration opportunities in our careers. So
no, we don't. And I think the point you made earlier about the way in which we talk about it needs a rebrand, because you're right. It isn't really about the title of the job, but like, what do you want to be spending your minutes and hours doing? I think is such a great reframe. So thank you for that.
Hey there, dedicated listener. If you've made it this far, we know you're passionate about shifting the way education works. And Tricia and I appreciate you. If you loved what you heard today, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to rate and review Shifting Schools wherever you listen to podcasts. Those ratings help us reach even more educators just like you. And if you know someone who could benefit from these conversations, please share this episode with them. Just one person. Think of the impact we can make together. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter for even more great content. And if you haven't already, join us at Camp Shifting Schools, where the conversations keep going long after the podcasts end. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for being part of Shifting Schools.